I've been true to myself for a long time, and I'm not stopping anytime soon.
I've been playing a lot of Ys VIII recently. I remember just laying around one day thinking about how we played a lot of Memories of Calcutta back when it came out on the Vita, and I really liked the game. I really liked the action combat and the JRPG elements. When I went to look up more information on Ys VIII, I found out it was on sale on the Ys Switch shop, so I figured it was fate and I bought it. In case you don't know, Ys is a long-running JRPG series with real-time combat. I've only played 2 in the series, and for me, I always come back for the gameplay first and the story second. But make no mistake, the game is a JRPG through and through, with a heavy focus on story. Ys VIII is really good. The combat especially I'm a big fan of. It's in real time and very action-focused. You can switch between your characters at any time, and each character has their own set of skills, which are a lot of fun to set up and mess around with. The game starts out with the main character named Adol aboard his ship that crash lands onto a deserted island. The game pretty much entirely takes place here, and the atmosphere of it is great. It reminds me of the biomes in Monster Hunter. There's tons of places to gather materials, lots of ore to mine, and wild animals just running around doing their thing. It's very natural looking. The world design is a definite plus. The story and just the general pacing of the game is okay. It's a little slow. It's the type of game where you're 25 hours in and they'll still introduce new game mechanics. And as someone who will defend Final Fantasy XIII as being a great game, I'm okay with this, if the gameplay is good. Which it is. Now with all that out of the way, what I really wanted to talk about are the aspects of Ys VIII that keep me coming back to it again and again. And what hooked me to start was the game's focus on exploration. From the very start of the game, your main goal is to just explore and chart out the island. As you explore, you'll find castaways, fight enemies, gather resources, and eventually you'll come to a point where you see an area that you know leads to someplace new, but you just can't reach it quite yet because you don't have the necessary skills. Here's where it gets interesting. Even though Ys is very much a JRPG with real-time combat, a lot of the game plays out in a way that reminds me a lot of traditional Metroidvanias. For example, you'll often come across areas where you just cannot progress in a certain direction, and you need to collect a special piece of equipment or item to continue. Like, some examples are a glove that lets you climb vines, or insect repellent that lets you destroy beehives. As you explore more of the island, you'll come across different survivors, and you can send them back to your base camp. And a lot of the survivors that you meet will offer gameplay benefits, like one will start selling items to you, another will start crafting new weapons. What's weird about this is that these survivors are people who crash landed on the island with you, and they really have no way of getting home, but they are completely okay with just starting a new life and rebuilding civilization from the ground up. It's a little weird, but it ties into the gameplay really well. There'll be some paths that you come across that'll be blocked by boulders or fallen trees or something like that, and the rubble can only be moved if you have a certain number of survivors living in your base camp. So you do really want to find those survivors, and you do kind of get invested into finding them, because that means you potentially have a new area to discover. Things like this just motivated me to continue exploring more and more and more. Even though the game isn't entirely open-ended, there's only so many places you can go at one time, but it is usually more than one, it still feels like you have so many avenues to explore. And going out of your way to discover new areas is always rewarded, because for every 10% of the map you uncover, you get a special item from one of your survivors back at camp. Also, the dungeon design is really good. The dungeons themselves can get really windy and almost maze-like, but at a certain point you'll open up a shortcut and find yourself right back at the beginning of the dungeon. Basically, this acts as a checkpoint, so you can leave and go heal up or whatever, and this type of level design really reminds me of Dark Souls, which in itself reminds me of games like Castlevania and Super Metroid. Now that I think about it, the deserted island you're exploring throughout the game is a lot like the castle or the planet that you would explore in a traditional Metroidvania. Now, I can't reiterate this enough. This game is very much a JRPG. There is a lot of dialogue, tons of story, a lot of characters, and in general I actually really like it, but the story pacing is very, very slow. It was definitely gameplay over story for me with this game. Ys VIII is like a JRPG, but where its best parts are the non-JRPG mechanics. The game's focus on exploration and how it incorporates elements of Metroidvanias, all mixed with its action-focused real-time combat system, are what I think make the game great. Anyways, thanks a lot for watching, and yes, the cats are still alive.
The star baker this week is Dana.
Dope.